This is Dr. Toby Capwell, curator, author, historical advisor, and all-round expert on historical arms and armor. And I'm your host, Dave Jewett, and today we're breaking down a selection of armor and character designs from a selection of sci-fi titles, including the Fallout TV show, Dredd, and Dune.
This is so similar to a Space Marine, really, in so many ways. And yet the feel of it, the mood, the body language, so many things is quite different. You look at the first iteration of Iron Man, it looked like that. I mean, that's a conscious reference, it's gotta be. I kind of have a soft spot for the original David Lynch Dune. That's well known to be terrible on a lot of levels, but I'm really very, very fond of that film.
Be sure to check out our Patreon, which is currently running a 50% off birthday sale for a longer, deeper, extended edition of this episode, plus dozens of other Director's Cut episodes. We'll be back in a future episode covering more historical movies, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that, and check the link in the description below for Toby's new book, An Armorer's Album, which is now available. We do hope you enjoy this episode, but now without further ado, I'll throw it over to Toby.
These armors were made by an armorer friend of mine named Jeff Wasson. He at least worked on them. I'm not quite sure what his role was, but he made a lot of them. And good on the production crew for making the real thing and not just animating it. They had a real armorer make these. And Jeff is also the illustrator of my books, one of the major illustrators of my Armor of the English Knight books.
Amazing.
And he's done a load of new artwork for the new book, which is coming out soon. But in his spare time, making medieval armor and illustrating books on armor, he made the Fallout armor.
Well, the show does a great job as a sort of first port of call for getting into Fallout. It explains a lot of the weirder elements, like how the paladins have a sort of religious, technological connection to them.
They're vaguely Space Marine-ish too, aren't they?
Like these paladins and knights, that's what the armored figures are called. And the squires are the ones that carry their machine gun, having to chase after them with these giant bag of stuff.
But isn't it fun when they've actually made stuff for real, at least in part?
Oh yeah, there's no beating physical effects.
Don't you just hope they do that with the Space Marines?
That'd be great.
I mean, you don't need it for everything, and sometimes you gotta animate stuff, I get that, but I love seeing stuff get made. The poor squire lugging the gear after him is hilarious.
The only thing missing is him banging coconuts together.
I don't think you'd find a horse to carry that. But isn't it interesting how many different kinds of character, how many different moods an armored figure can convey. This is so similar to a Space Marine, really, in so many ways. And yet the feel of it, the mood, the body language, so many things is quite different. There are similarities too, of course, but. There was a tradition in Renaissance Germany of hunting bear in full plate armor with daggers. That was a form of hunting that this kind of reminds me of. There are a number of pictorial depictions of it, that it's a knightly thing to go out and fight a bear with a dagger in your armor. It might often have gone in a very similar way to this, I don't know. That's the same character?
So between these two scenes, the character in the armor dies, the squire puts it on. And he's not quite as experienced using it.
The claw marks. See, the marks on the armor tell a story.
You drive that thing like a shopping cart.
That's an interesting suggestion in that little exchange. He refers to the wearing of the armor as operating it. Like you're operating a piece of machinery rather than wearing a suit or a costume. And I've always thought that the use of real armor is a very similar thing. You need to learn how to operate it, like driving a forklift or something like that. What it'll allow you to do, what it won't allow you to do, and how best to move in it, how to conserve energy. It's interesting that they refer to it that way. But this does underline an interesting problem that depiction of knights in films or TV brings up. George MacDonald Fraser, the author of the famous Flashman novels, much beloved by many people. He was also a screenwriter, and he wrote a very interesting book called The Hollywood History of the World. It's a very, very interesting book about the portrayal of historical subjects in the history of cinema. And in his chapter on the Middle Ages, he says that the problem with medieval movies, an essential problem with them, and with films about knights in armor in particular, is that knights in armor are hard to take seriously. And although I would want to qualify that and elaborate on that, I know what he's saying. Fallout here shows you how quickly an imposing, frightening, heroic image of a man in armor, it can change in an instant to satirical, laughable nonsense. You know, the knight looks totally heroic until he bangs his head on the top of the door frame. You know what I mean? And that kind of reminds me too of how easily the image of the armored warrior was co-opted into satire, into, for example, the art of satirical cartoons in the 18th and 19th centuries. You look at the history of satirical cartoons, the knight in armor is a routine image for ridicule and satire. You want to ridicule anything for being clumsy, out of touch with modernity, old-fashioned, obsolete, all of those things, you bring in the image of a knight. As one of my favorites that comes to mind is a satirical cartoon that came out in the middle of the 19th century, around the time of the first ironclad battleships, when the idea of cladding a ship in iron just seemed laughable. And there's a satirical cartoon about that shows something like, you know, the modern sailor, the modern swab or whatever. And they're all wearing comedy medieval armor to lampoon the concept of an ironclad warship. And here that you really see that this image, one minute the paladin looks impressive and imposing, and the next minute he's sitting down exhausted saying, "This sucks." You know? And knights, it's such a fine line between looking like a hero and looking like an idiot. You know, it's a knife edge balance. That's why it's important to treat armor right for what you're trying to do. You get if the use of the armor is inconsistent with the mood or intentions of the story on screen, it's not going to work. And the design of these guys is kind of interesting because they look scary but also kind of silly at the same time. They can be murdering people horrendously one minute and then being kind of awkward and ridiculous the next minute.
February is EXP's birthday, so to celebrate, we are running a month-long sale over on our Patreon. 50% off all new memberships and 3 months free on annual subscriptions. Which means you can get access to over an entire year's worth of extended Director's Cut episodes and exclusive Patreon content for half price all the way up to the end of February. We've also got a sale on our merch, 10% off all orders on expvideo.info using code BIRTHDAY10, and this includes our new limited edition birthday t-shirt. Every new patron and every piece of merch sold goes a huge way into supporting EXP, so thank you to everyone for checking out the links in the description. But now, I'll get back to the episode.
I wish they'd done more with his first armor. I really like the first armor.
Yeah, it's definitely a intense, rustic, kit-bashed quality to this that's not even close to being present on the rest of the armors.
Right, but you know, when Iron Man was a new superhero, when he first came out in the 60s, you look at the first iteration of Iron Man, it looked like that. I mean, that's a conscious reference. It's got to be. Because, you know, whether you're inventing it for a film or a comic book, you got to start somewhere. And an idea has to have time to evolve and advance. You have to do that before you can get to the red and gold one. Armor evolves.
It's interesting, the idea of armor evolving, because they play on that throughout all the Iron Man films. You find a flaw in the first armor, fix it in the second. Second armor freezes up at high altitude, adds functionality to defrost it, all that stuff. They really harp on that point throughout all of Iron Man's appearances throughout the Marvel franchise.
In the old comics in the 70s, I remember as a kid, they just dodged the whole issue because he just had anatomical musculature that was gold colored and, colored to look like reflective metal. But he just moved like it was rubber. And they had something about how the metal has some kind of magnetic coating so that it can move like rubber. It was basically metal that can move like rubber because that's how we want to draw it. And the comics never really tried, at least in the 70s when I was a kid, they never tried to create something that looked like a machine that could work really. But I liked in this film that they tried to show the articulation of the joints and the composition of different plates and like ailerons and steering surfaces that pop out of the ankles and so forth. There's like a mechanical rationale behind it that's quite fun.
And to think he built it all in a cave with a box of scraps.
That's all we get of the Mark I, right?
Pretty much.
Not bad.
Yeah, I felt like that too.
I think I've seen you in similar poses when we saw you
right.
fighting armor. There's a picture of you slumped in a chair, fully armored with a cup of tea in your hand somewhere.
Right. It's a narrow knife edge between looking like a hero and looking like an idiot.
At your service, sir.
Gauge heads-up display.
Check.
It's kind of a clever way of giving you a sense of his environment inside the helmet too, like shadowing out his face like that, like you can somehow see through into his world in there. So when you put a helmet like that on and your head's covered and everything, your face is covered, it does become like your own little enclosed world. And the building up of the look in this film is nice too, that his second attempt, which is getting closer to where he wants to be, it's still unpainted. It's just the polished metal. And then the next level after that, he puts the color onto it. It's that stage reveal, the series of reveals is quite a nice kind of visual progression. Armor is generally bad in extremes of hot and cold. So the armor that freezes up and stops working. I'm not sure real armor does that, but it certainly becomes fantastically uncomfortable in cold weather. It's another version of the metamorphosis from human to armored creature. It's absolutely a version of the idea of the squires arming the night, the nightly vigil, the mechanicum arming the space marine. It's all variations on that essential transformation.
Obviously, this is a style all of its own, and considering much of Dune-inspired Warhammer.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, the DNA of Dune and Warhammer are very closely linked, if not inseparable in many ways. And I think the root of it, again, is the high, distant futurism combined with a sense of the historical past. They still have painted manuscript books and essentially feudal society. I can't admit to being the biggest fan. I read the book and it's a fascinating book. I'm just sometimes not convinced by the need to adapt something for the screen. Sometimes maybe a book should just stay a book, I don't know. A lot of the design is amazing, and you can see how lovers of sci-fi art would love what they have on screen here. There's some perfectly good work happening here.
It's long been assumed that the Sardaukar that we're seeing here served as inspiration for the Space Wolves.
Oh yeah?
Because these are the Emperor's executioners.
Right. The Emperor's blades, all that. Yeah.
And they've got some of that tribal motif with the blood marking, the ritualistic sacrifice.
Yeah, and the emphasis on bladed weapons in a super distant, futuristic, high-tech environment. I guess Dune did that before Warhammer, but that's a notable similarity.
I always enjoy fiction that will have a conceit like that, but create a good reason for it. Be that the ranged weapons don't interact
force fields.
with the force fields because it can create catastrophic explosions, and that you can't always use your force field because it freaks the worm out.
Hey, as long as the fantasy obeys its own rules and the rules make some kind of storytelling sense, fine. I mean, I possibly had a hard time with these films because I kind of have a soft spot for the original David Lynch Dune.
With Patrick Stewart in,
Yeah.
where the force field's all cubes.
That's well known to be terrible on a lot of levels, but I'm really very, very fond of that film. Probably some of your viewers will think that reduces my credibility in some way, but I really don't care. I'm very fond of that film. I think the design of the black rubber still suits in that film is iconic and really cool. Maybe if people love this version, they hate David Lynch, but
Both have their merits.
yeah,
I say diplomatically.
I mean, it's probably even less faithful to the book, or not faithful at all, who knows, but I guess it's what I grew up with. I mean, this is all very well-made gear. You know, it all looks good, the design is good and everything. It doesn't click for me somehow. It doesn't stick in my memory somehow. It's like, okay, it's rubber gear, fine. I'm sure it makes all kinds of design sense. I just don't remember it like I remember Patrick Stewart's mad rubber outfit, you know?
Juries, executioners, judges.
For lovers of actors who don't take their helmets off, this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate example of an actor putting the story before his celebrity, and helmets off to him.
So they toned down the wackiness of 2000 AD for this one, at least in terms of how the judges dress.
Yeah.
It's more Judge Dredd through the lens of tactical, but it works.
Well, I mean, when it's a live action film, there's an inherent realism that's quite hard to get away from. If you've chosen that medium rather than a comic or an animation or whatever, it's got to be appropriate to that medium. It's got to work in reality one way or another.
I think my face would hurt if I held like a scowl for that long.
I don't know, my face naturally falls into that. I think my natural resting position is pretty grumpy.
You'd make a good judge.
My wife calls it the neutral face, Toby's neutral face. If he's naturally resting, he naturally looks grumpy even when he's not. It's that sort of, what does your chin and your lower face look like? Can you pull off Batman? Can you pull off Judge Dredd? It's all about this part, right? I forgot how good this film is. I should watch it again.
Excellent.
I hope those zippers are armored. I wouldn't want a big gap in my breastplate right down the middle. Horribly exposed necks again. They're poor necks. I worry about them. It's so hard though. You know, it's like the inversely proportional law of armor design. If you increase protection, mobility goes down. If mobility goes up, protection goes down. With a neck, you need maximum mobility, but you also need maximum protection, and you can't have both. Well, at the end there, we saw his armor let him down. We saw the failure of his armor, and he gets shot through the wall there. All armor has limitations. One thing I would still like to see in more films and television is the armor actively working. If you're wearing all of that, the character must have a reason. Films need to treat armor as something more than just a costume. They still need to take more advantage of the storytelling potential. If you as a designer have come up with it looking a certain way, we should see why it looks like that. And that's still something that's often missing. So let's see more of that.
Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you like the video if you did, and subscribe for more content featuring Dr. Capwell coming very soon. We've got an episode on historical movies and another game compilation coming your way, so make sure you stay tuned for those and let us know what else you'd like to see us cover on the channel. Want to give a massive shout out to all of our supporters over on the EXP Patreon for helping to support the channel and for allowing us to make cool content like this. More to come very soon. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and we will see you in the next one.